Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen Nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. So every Friday we try to open up the floor to any questions that anyone might have so that we can deal with some of the problems and issues in the community. One of the things I spoke about previously was riba and the reality of it. We spoke about purchasing a home. We had a question about purchasing a car, student loans, are they permissible? And about the different types of meat and why you have people who eat out and people who don't. So if anybody has any questions, inshallah, we can deal with them. Or there are questions that I've received that I can share with you. Yes?
So can you talk about the stock market?
Stocks, that's a very good question. So basically the stock market, the idea behind it is that everyone purchases a share in a company, right? So a company has shares and they say if you would like a share in that company, if you'd like part of that company, then you're welcome to purchase that share. And what happens is depending on how the company moves, right? So if the company gets profit, the value of that stock goes up. And if the company loses, the value of that stock goes down. And like I said, it's just a share in the company. Stocks in and of themselves, there's nothing problematic in it. So if me and you go into business, because essentially it's a partnership, right? Essentially it's a partnership because you have companies that are private, that are not on the market, and you have companies that are still private, but they're on the market because they share with that. And this is why you have something called stockholders meetings. So a stockholder meeting is basically, they'll tell you, they say, hey, we're going to be voting on the direction that the company is moving in, and depending on the number of shares that you own in that company, you are allowed to be part of the decision-making process. The question then comes in, how do I decide which companies to invest in, right? And this is a legitimate question. So you have different agencies who actually will grade those different companies. There are two very prominent apps that are available today. One of them is Zoya, the other one is Islamically. You can download them on your phone. They're subscription based, and what they do is their job is to actually grade different companies. They use different criteria to grade those companies. So you'll find Zoya is more conservative, Islamically is more liberal in how they grade those applications and how they grade these stocks. How do they decide? They say, okay, what percentage of this company is invested in pornography, is invested in tobacco, is invested in alcohol? Because many times what happens with these companies is that a portion of their portfolio goes into investing in the product, right? So if they make cars, or if they make drones, or if they provide a service, a portion of the money goes into providing that service. A portion of their money goes into investment. So they take some of the money that they get and they reinvest it into other products. And then a portion of their money they keep cash, right? They need liquid in case there's some type of emergency, there's some types of funding that they need to purchase different things. So this is in general how a company divides its portfolio: research and development, investment, and liquid savings, right? So liquid cash to have on hand. And like I said, different companies divide it in different ways, but this is just one way that they do that. So what these companies do that grade them, they say, okay, where are they investing their money? So you have certain stock indices like Amana and some other Muslim trusts that say, okay, as long as those investments, if 95% of those investments are in halal things, then we will check off and say that this is a halal investment. Why do they have a 5% allowance? Why do they have a 5% allowance? Because unfortunately, there is no company that's 100% clean. And this is the problem. So some people might ask, okay, why 95%? Why not 97? Why not 93? There are a number of calculations that go into grading those particular stocks. One of those is that the availability of the stocks. If we make the number too high, if you make it 97, 98%, the list that we can invest in, what happens? It's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. If you get to 100%, you're only going to come down to like 2 or 3 companies. And if you make it, as the number increases, the number of companies that we can invest in increases. But why don't you want to make the number too low? Why don't you make it 90%? Because there has to be a cost-benefit analysis at that point, saying that, okay, because these companies, we have to make sure that the overwhelming majority of their investments are halal, We want to keep that balance where we keep the list long enough, where there are enough companies to invest in, but we don't want to make it too open so that people start thinking it's okay to invest in companies that have that. Saying that, just because we have Zoya, just like because we have Islamically, just because we have Amana, I individually, can I make my own judgment? Can I go and look into that company and make my own judgment call? Absolutely. There's no authority that's going to come and tell you like, okay, this investment you made is haram. This is something that I have to decide individually. Is it good to utilize these apps? Is it good to utilize some of these grading things? Absolutely, because this is their job, right? They do this as a profession. What they do is they go into the company, they'll grade it, they'll look at it. So one of the things that makes Zoya a little bit more conservative is they said, okay, what kind of business practices are they doing? Are they spending more in debt? Like, are they taking more loans to make more purchases? And for them, that'll be something that eliminates that stock as something that you can invest in. Islamically, we'll say, regardless of how much debt that company takes in order to purchase, as long as those purchases are halal, it is permissible to invest in that company. So I tried not to make it too complicated, but in general, these are how companies are divided and how they're made. Another discussion is the type of transactions that happen in the market. So you have futures, you have options, you can have long trades, you can have short trades, you can have swing trades, you can have day trades. All of these have different rulings depending on how you invest in the market. So a lot of people will ask about day trades. As long as ownership is established in the portion of the company, even if it's sold within the same day, there's no problem with that. Swing trading, this is by agreement, something that is completely permissible. And swing trading is basically when you hold it for 2 weeks or a month and then you decide to sell it. And then you have something called longs. Longs is when you hold a stock or you hold a portion or a position in a company and you sell it years down the line. So these three types of transactions are agreed on. There is a difference of opinion on day trading because they feel that you actually don't establish ownership. That's the only one that there's a difference on. When it comes to futures, futures is basically on how you deal with, you're selling the contract. So if I say, all right, I'm going to buy oil from you at this price and I want to collect this oil from you in 10 years. Are you guys following? So basically, I want to buy a gallon of oil for $1 and I'm going to collect that oil after 10 years. On this, there's a major difference of opinion. Because there are different types of transactions that happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. You have a good number of scholars that will say that this type of transaction is impermissible. What happens in futures is that you don't ever actually collect the oil in the end, you sell the contract to other people. And the value of that contract changes over time. So within that 10, 15, 20-year time span, before you actually collect the oil, the contract that I have, this is what's being sold on the market. Because some people will be like, well, that dollar per gallon is something that is very valuable to me, so I'm willing to pay $1.20. Someone else will say, I'm willing to pay $1.40. And if the value of oil drops, they'll say, no, I'm only going to give 90 cents for that contract. So that's called the futures market. Again, you have a good majority of scholars who say that that type of transaction is impermissible because they don't allow futures. They say that this is something that has to be done. Any transaction is done yadan biyad. But there are certain transactions that the Prophet ﷺ allowed, like Bay' Araya, where people would purchase dates on a future price, saying that, okay, when the harvest comes, then I will purchase that. So some scholars have allowed it in commodities. In commodities, things that are tangible. They don't allow it in currency, but they'll allow it in commodities, things like oil, things like fruit, things like, all of these things that are tangible assets. And then you have a small group of scholars who say that even in finance, it is something that is allowed, and they have two reasons for that. Some of them say is darura, if we don't get involved in the markets, if we don't involve ourselves in the current markets, and this is something that doesn't spread fasad, it doesn't spread harm, and it is something that is meant to be beneficial for the Muslim community, then it is permissible to involve yourself in that transaction if the goal is, again, to empower the Muslim community and to figure out an exit strategy so that we can create our own independent markets where we don't rely on that type of transaction. The other group of scholars say that as long as those things are involved in fiat currency, paper currency, they say paper currency is equivalent to monopoly money, and because it doesn't have any inherent value itself versus commodity currency like gold or silver, then it is permissible in these type of transactions. And this is just a summary, a very general summary of the type of transactions that happen. Inshallah, when we get a little bit more time, I'll talk about options also, which is another different type of transaction. So short selling. So these two, inshallah, I'll leave for another time. They're the most problematic. So like, you know, options and short selling, these are the most problematic out of all of the transactions. In general, when I talk about day trading, swing trading, long trading, and futures, there is a difference of opinion in the first and the last. There's a difference of opinion between day trading and future trading, but options and short selling, there's less of a difference of opinion concerning them, with more scholars leaning on the impermissibility side of them. But inshallah, like I said, it's something we'll talk about at another time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi